Hello, good day. My name is Dr. Nasir Aziz Wage. I have done my Masters and PhD in Botany, and I have qualified national eligibility test as well as state eligibility tests. And presently I am working as a NEET academician in APS Residential Academy, and I would like to have today's demo lecture on topic photosynthesis, which is a very important topic related to the plant physiology of botany class 11th. So I will start from photosynthesis in this very particular lecture. As we know from get started. We are starting with the topic photosynthesis. Photosynthesis, as we know, it is comprised of two words, photo, which means light, as we have studied in the lower classes, and it is synthesis means making or putting together something. We know that in the previous classes we have studied the photosynthesis, but not in an elaborate manner. Here we will study it in elaborate manner. So we will take it in parts. Firstly, we will study the part of light, and as we know that light is also called as solar energy, which comes from the sun, or you can say it's also called as radiant energy, and it comes to our earth in the form of electromagnetic spectrum. Electromagnetic spectrum. And as we know, this electromagnetic spectrum is made up of various wavelengths. The most beneficial wavelength which is used for this photosynthesis is the visible part of this electromagnetic spectrum. We know that visible part of this electromagnetic spectrum, when we split it in dispersion process, is comprised of 7 colors, and together they give a color of white. Okay, starting from these 7 colors, the visible part before, and the wavelengths of this Vidya start from 390 nanometers, and the red wavelength is around 700 nanometers. This wavelength is actually the usable energy, usable wavelength, which is used for photosynthesis by different organisms which are photosynthetically active. And we can say that this electromagnetic spectrum is also made up of ultraviolet rays, and here we can see these are made up of, when we increase the wavelength, they are made up of infrared rays, and here there are also microwaves, etc., in which there are radio waves, etc. And before the ultraviolet rays, we can say that there are X-rays which have high penetrating power, there are gamma rays, but all these gamma rays, X-rays, UV rays, these are not useful for the process of photosynthesis. Only the usable part of this light portion is this visible spectrum, which we call as Vidyar. Okay. And now the second question is how we can put together this light energy, how we can use this light energy. So our second step will be how we put it together. We'll start from this point, the ultimate source of energy. The ultimate source of energy. To our earth is sun, and as we have discussed it before, the sun releases its energy in the form of solar energy or visible light in the form of discrete packets, which we call as photons. The small packets, photons, are known as the energy packets, which comprise the solar energy, and this is a physical quantity. This is the physical quantity or physical form of energy. And this physical form of energy is converted to chemical form of energy. Chemical form of energy by the process of photosynthesis, and the organisms which can convert it from one form of physical to another form chemical are known as transducers. And we know that this type of reaction in photosynthesis is done by the transducers, and the most effective transducers are higher plants. However, there are some photosynthetic bacteria. There are some photosynthetic bacteria which also use this light energy to convert it into the chemical energy. Photosynthetic bacteria. There are some photosynthetic protists which convert this solar energy into chemical energy. Now the question is, if this physical form or sun energy or solar energy, sunlight, these are energy packets, and these we have to convert into the chemical form by these photosynthetic organisms, which can be prokaryotic, which can be eukaryotic, to convert it into the chemical form, to form the chemical bonds, which is the soluble form, and these form, some form glucose. These type of carbohydrate molecules are formed with the help of this solar energy by these photosynthetic organisms. Now, let us start the topic of photosynthesis, which is related to your NCERT in 11th class. As we know, we can define photosynthesis by general reaction, that is 6 times carbon dioxide plus 12 times water gives 1 molecule of glucose and 6 times oxygen release and 6 times water molecule. Carbon dioxide taken from the atmosphere, water is absorbed by the roots from the soil by the plants, and these 2 smaller molecules are used to make a complex molecule of glucose, with the release of oxygen and water. Now the question is, how the plants, or why only the photosynthetic plants or photosynthetic organisms can use this type of energy. And here we write it from the beginning. We have been studying it from the class 4. We use carbon dioxide and water molecules are put together to form a complex molecule of glucose with the release of oxygen and some amount of water. Here we write it as like this, in the form with the help of sunlight and chlorophyll A molecules, or in general we say chlorophyll. This is the general reaction of photosynthesis. Now I will elaborate this as we have studied it earlier like this, but we will elaborate it up to the 11th class or the NEET class level. So, the first thing, sunlight is a physical energy, and it is used to form the complex molecules of glucose. So can I say that the physical energy is converted to chemical energy, and that process is known as physico-chemical process. In this, the energy is being used up, and that process in which energy is being used up, that process is known as endergonic process. Endergonic process in which energy is being used or utilized Okay, so we can see that it's a physico-chemical process, it's an endergonic process, and this type of photosynthetic reactions occur within the cells. We cannot do photosynthesis outside the cell. So we can say that it's an intracellular process which occurs within the cell. It's an intracellular process. And the next, we can say that in it, some molecules are oxidized, some molecules are reduced, which we will study in the next slide. It's an oxidoreductive process. It's an oxidoreductive process in which some molecules are oxidized, some molecules get reduced. So we can say that it's an oxidoreductive process. And when energy in B is being used, we can also term it as it is an uphill process. Uphill process means that the energy is being used up. So now we can define photosynthesis with respect to these 5 terms also. So can we define photosynthesis now? Photosynthesis is, we can say, photosynthesis is I will add another point in it. We can say that 2 smaller molecules are being used to make a complex molecule of glucose, and that process in which smaller molecules are put together to form a complex molecule, we call that process as anabolic process. And the process in which a complex molecule is being split up in smaller molecules, that process is known as catabolic process. So I can say that photosynthesis is a intracellular anabolic physicochemical endergonic oxidoreductive process in which carbon dioxide and water are used or utilized to form complex glucose molecule or a sugar molecule, with the help of or in the presence of, sunlight, which is necessary for the energy, and pigment molecules, which are chlorophyll molecules. Now, we have defined photosynthesis in an NCERT manner, which is related to your book. So, this is the process of photosynthesis, and this is the general reaction of photosynthesis. Now, we have described here, first we described the sunlight. Now, we have to describe why are these chlorophyll molecules or the pigment molecules, and why only the photosynthetic organisms can use this type of reactions, this type of complex reactions. Now, the next slide. The solar energy comes from the sun. It's received by the plants, or we can say in general, photosynthetic organisms. They can be oxygenic, they can be anoxygenic, they can be prokaryotic, they can be eukaryotic. That is a secondary question which we have studied in the previous chapter of biological classification when we study the bacteria, different types of bacteria. Now, the sun releases its energy, it comes to our earth, and in particular is received by the plants, and in plants, this type of photosynthetic reactions are completed by the green plants, especially green parts of the plant. For example, the most important parts are leaves, green bark, fruit, epicarp, in which also a green color is present, sepals of flower, and stuff. These are different parts which can convert this solar energy which is coming from the sun and use it in the process of photosynthesis. In particular, let's go ahead. The major part among these green plants is leaves. So let's go forward with the leaves. Why only these green parts? And in particular, over this side, we will continue with the part of leaves. And these leaves have specialized type of cells which carry out this type of photosynthesis are mesophyll cells. And these mesophyll cells which are present in the leaves have specialized double membranous structures which we call as chloroplast. Okay, we'll discuss in the next slide the structure of chloroplast. As you have already studied, you might have studied the chloroplast in the previous classes, as well as we have studied it in cell organelles, or we will study it in cell as basic unit of life. That's another chapter. There we can also study the structure of this chloroplast. Here I will continue with the chloroplast. Why only these chloroplasts or these mesophyll cells or only these green parts? Because the plants and the green parts and the mesophyll and the chloroplast. The chloroplast has some special type of pigments which we call chlorophyll molecules. And with it, some accessory pigments like carotenoids in case of higher plants, and in case of prokaryotes or algae, we can say that to assess these chlorophyll molecules are phycobilins, and in case of bacteria, we can say that there is bacteriochlorophyll, bacterioviridin, like these type of pigments which are similar to these chlorophyll molecules of higher plants, but they have some different structures or different molecular formula. Bacterio, purpurine, viridin, we can say that these are the different, actually the molecules, the pigments which are present in these chloroplasts, due to which only they can convert this solar energy and do the process of photosynthesis to make it into a complex molecule. Now let us study the structure of chloroplast, because in order to know the photosynthesis we must know the structure of this chloroplast. Okay, let's study it in detail. Next, as we know that chloroplast is present in eukaryotic cells, and it's a oval type of structure. It's a double membranous structure. This is a double membranous structure. Study the chloroplast structure. We know that these chloroplasts or double membrane structure are only present in eukaryotes. So we can say that it's an eukaryotic chloroplast or eukaryotes. It's only present in eukaryotes. Okay. In this chloroplast, we can say that it's divided into two components or two compartments. It's divided into, it has two compartments. One we call as grana and another we call as stroma. Let me clear it from this diagram. In here there are disc-like structures, stacked one upon another like this. And there are some membranous structures which connect these disc-like structures together. And these membranes are called as thylakoid. These disc-like structures are thylakoids, and together they are connected by stromal lamellae. Okay, let us evaluate. First, this we can say that is the outer membrane of chloroplast. As we said it, it's a double membrane structure. So in between it is intermembrane space. However, it's very less, but still membranes cannot be fused. Intermembrane space, and now here we can say that it is the inner membrane of chloroplast. These ring-like structures which are stacked one upon another, these are together they are called as grana, and grana are made up of simple coin-like structures or disc-like structures which we call as thylakoids individually. And now this group of thylakoids or the stack of thylakoids is called as grana. These thylakoids are stacked one upon the other, and actually these thylakoids contain those pigments, or we can say that those photosynthetic pigments which we described earlier. Photosynthetic pigments which we described earlier, which was like chlorophyll in case of higher plants and carotenoids. And these pigment molecules, these photosynthetic pigments are present within the membrane of thylakoid, thylakoid membrane. And we can say that this chloroplast, it is membrane. This thylakoid is membrane within a membrane. This thylakoid, we can say also it like this. Thylakoid is membrane within a membrane structure. Membrane within a membrane. Membrane within a membrane structure, which contains these photosynthetic pigments in its membrane. And those photosynthetic pigments in case of higher plants is chlorophyll molecules and carotenoids. In case of bacteria, those are another molecules. Okay. Now, this structure has a fluid matrix-like structure present in here. And this fluid-like structure is known as stroma. And the membrane which connects these two grana is called as, is present within the stroma, so we can say it is stromal lamellae. In case of bacteria, these lamellae are present, however the full functional chloroplast is absent. There only these lamellae are present which carry out the type of photosynthesis, which are the extensions of mesosomes. In here, we can say that these molecules, I will change the color of this, I will say the pigment molecules are present within this membrane in here. However, we can say that these pigments cannot retain within the chloroplast on its own. So they must be bounded. They must be bounded. These photosynthetic pigments must be bounded with the specialized or the proteins which bound them to themselves in this chloroplast so they can be retained within the membrane. And these type of proteins and the photosynthetic pigments together comprise photosystems. Together comprise photosystems, which we will describe in future slides. Now, we must be aware of this chloroplast structure. It's made up of two subunits or two compartments. One is grana, which contains these thylakoid stacks, and another is stroma. It's a fluid type structure, fluid matrix type structure. And in this chloroplast, grana contains the pigments and stroma does not contain any pigments, however it contains the different organelles which are necessary for this chloroplast and the functions done by this chloroplast. Now we can see that grana. Let's discuss grana a bit further. It has two types of membranes. If we say that this is the type of one grana, there are two types of regions we can see. One region is over here, this region, or we can, I will shade it like this. These are not oppressed, and like here, these are not oppressed regions. We can say that this one is the non-oppressed region of grana. Non-oppressed region of grana, and in here it is the oppressed region of grana, which is compressed within the thylakoids. We can say that it is oppressed region of grana. The importance of these oppressed and non-oppressed regions we will describe it in the future slides, but here we must know that what's oppressed region and why it is non-oppressed region in this very grana. Now that we have described the sunlight falls on the plants, and in particular the green parts, and in green parts there are specialized type of cells or structures which we know as chloroplast, and in chloroplast there are special type of pigments which are known as photosynthetic pigments, and these photosynthetic pigments are the actual molecules which convert the solar energy into the, or which help in the conversion of solar energy to the chemical energy. And these pigments are bound within the thylakoid membrane. So we can say that light energy is first trapped by this grana. So we can say that light energy is used up first by this grana, because only the grana has these photosynthetic pigments. However, the stroma is a fluid type structure. It's a fluid or matrix type structure in which pigments are not present. So only the grana part can use the light energy, and then that energy or that converged form of chemical forms, ATP and NADPH, which we will study in the future classes or the future slides, that those molecules are being used up to form the complex molecules of glucose in the stroma. So we can say that there are two types of reactions. I will discuss it in the next slide. In photosynthesis, in general, we can say that photosynthesis has two parts or two components. First is light reaction, which takes part in grana, and in here light reaction gives us the products of adenosine triphosphate and NADPH. These products are being used up for the complex process of conversion of or the mixing of carbon dioxide to complex molecules of glucose. These two steps, and this fixation is known as dark reaction. Dark reaction is a misnomer. It does not take place in the dark. However, the dark reaction is Directly the light is not involved in this very particular reaction, but it's dependent upon the products of light reaction which are liberated in the grana part, from the grana part. From the grana part, ATP and NADPH are released or formed, and these ATP and NADPH are used to make complex molecules of glucose from simpler molecules of carbon dioxide and water. I hope this was the general introduction of photosynthesis. After that, the photosynthesis can be divided into two different parts, light reaction and dark reaction. Hope you have enjoyed this. Thank you.